Hey there, I want to share a really cool tool with you called Flubaroo. It is an add-on for Google Forms and it helps with analytics. So for Google Forms, I'm not talking about forms that we use just to collect data. I'm talking about forms that we might use for an assessment. So a quiz or some open-ended questions, check your understanding kind of thing. And so what Flubaroo allows us to do is to take that information, grade it, yes, but also take a look at individual questions and how the class performed individually and as a whole. So first of all, if you use Google Forms for quizzes, you do know that there's a built-in quiz setting. And it's great. You can assign point values to each question, and it will grade it for you and tell the students immediately what they got. And other tools in learning management systems like Canvas also give you that. This gives you a little bit more analytics, and also I find that it's really easy to assess open-ended questions, which is where I really like the tools here for Google Forms Flubaroo. So first off, I think it would be good for us to take a look at the options that you have for different questions for an assessment in a Google form. So here is a sample quiz in a Google form. Um, as far as the structure goes, you could just list all the questions all in one section, but you'll notice that I do have my quiz broken into sections, and the very first section is always first name, last name, and class period. The reason for that is up here in your settings and in presentation, you have the option to shuffle your question order. We get that option in our other type of assessment tools as well, but shuffling the question order is really helpful if you've got a lab full of students who are all working on the same assessment, and you want to try to discourage them from looking at each other's answer choices. So I do like to shuffle the question order. If I shuffle the question order and everything's in the same section, then I'm going to get some students that don't even put their name in until halfway down the test. So I always like to section it up. So the first section is for first name, last name, and period, and then that second section starts the actual assessment, the quiz. So here's some cool things. You can see right here I have a multiple choice question. I was able to insert a image here. And so they can identify this image. And these are multiple choice questions, you can tell because of the little circles. The other options I have, short answer, multiple choice and check boxes. If it's plain and simple assessment, just as basic as we get, I mean, multiple choice, possibly some check boxes. And we're going to talk more about open-ended later on. And I'm going to do a quick shout out here for linear scale. If you have to survey your students, or you want to survey your students and kind of see where they feel like their strengths lie or their weaknesses and confidence levels, etc., they do have a linear scale option here that's pretty handy for assessments. So for this quiz, we have a couple of pictures for them to identify. Down here, I'm scrolling so that you can see here's what a checkbox would look like. So they're squares, and they're going to check all that apply, and that's going to give us just a quick look at were they paying attention while we went over these couple of topics. So now that we have a clear idea of what kind of questions we could ask in a Google Form assessment, now let's take a look at that built-in quiz setting that's already there. That way, when I show you Flubaroo, then you're going to see very quickly the differences between the built-in quiz and this new add-on. All right, back over at this assessment, this little quiz, let's take a look at the built-in quiz setting. So I'm going to go over here to my settings wheel, gear, and I'm going to pop over to quizzes. So if I choose to make this a quiz, just slide that over. There's some built-in options here that are pretty handy. So it's going to lock mode on Chromebooks, meaning they can't open up other tabs and search for the answers. That's pretty handy. It's going to tell them immediately after the submission what their grade is. It can tell them the missed questions, correct answers, and point values. And of course, these are check boxes, so I can remove those if I see fit. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And so I see some extra indicators here, so that we've got lock mode on, and it's going to require them to enter in their email address, their Google account, so that we can record who's taking the quiz. And then as I go down here to my actual first question, I'll notice that I have answer key at the bottom. When I click on answer key, then I can assign a point value, I can give feedback, then I can say done. And now it's noting that there is a point value. It also would give the correct answer there. So this is a hard drive, and then done. Okay, and so you can see the note that that's the correct answer. We can see that there's 1 point value. So then it will go and grade for you. So if you have a straightforward multiple choice and you just need to give them the feedback, this is a great built-in option. But if you're looking for more, then we need to look at an add-on that can give us some more feedback on how the students are doing for the different questions. All right, so now we know what the built-in quiz setting looks like. Let's take a look at what Flubaroo looks like. So after you've graded your quiz, what are you going to be looking at? What will you see? So this is the end result of Flubaroo. So after it has graded your students' submissions, it provides this spreadsheet. So let me just walk you through kind of what you're seeing here. First of all, it is going to list the possible points, the average points that were earned by your class, the number of students that submitted a response, and the number of low-scoring questions. So how many questions do you need to go take a look at, basically? So notice all the color coding here. That's the first thing that I kind of see. It's very easy to see who passed and who didn't. So it's going to automatically put those students who are below a 70 in red and the ones above in black. Also, it's going to tell you how many times they were submitted, total points that they earned. And so looking down here, I can see the questions that were asked. A 1 means they got it correct. A 0 means that they did not. So they earned the point or they did not. And notice you've got this bright orange right here. And that tells me that the majority of the class did not get this question correct. So if I scroll down just a little bit, I'll notice that I have percentages at the bottom of my results. That's the percentages of students that got this question correct. So I can see that I've got 100% here. So clearly they understood that picture, that they recognized it. But then down here, output devices, they didn't get it. I can see that very clearly. Less than half the class responded correctly. So very quickly with the color coding, I can see where some changes need to be made. And I'm going to show you some other tools that we can use here that'll make it even easier for you to analyze the results that you get. So this is Flubaroo. So now that you've gotten a taste for what Flubaroo is going to look like and some of the results that we can get from that, I want to walk you through setting up your quiz or your assessment to use Flubaroo successfully, efficiently, and some things that I've learned over the years of using it that can be really helpful when you're setting up your spreadsheet here. So let's take a look back at our quiz. All right, back over to our sample quiz. First of all, I want to point out that I do not have the built-in quizzes option selected. So if I scroll down to our questions here, you'll notice that there's no answer key to fill in or points. We will do that within Flubaroo. And so right now we're going to go with, we've just finished making the form. So just finished that assessment. So the very next thing you would want to do is take the quiz yourself. A couple of reasons. Number one, yes, you want to proofread, double check. Number two, you need a key. You need an answer key so that you do know what to grade by when you're using Flubaroo. So what you would do after you finish making your quiz is you would come up here to this little eyeball. That's your preview. It is going to open another tab here at the top. And this is the actual quiz. So this is what your students would see. Now I do want to remind you that I did have the shuffle question option on. So notice that even this first section with name, it is shuffled, which is another reason why I break it into sections. If you remember me saying I break it into sections, otherwise your names are going to be at the end or at the middle. This is why. So first section, they're going to have to put their last name in the last name box and the first name in the first name box. And then as they go to the next section, it'll be random order as well. So don't put your name here. I always put key, so it's really easy to find the answer key, especially when you are starting Flubaroo. Okay, so then we're going to very quickly take the quiz and make sure that everything looks the way we expect it to. And we're going to make sure that we have the correct answers. Obviously, we're creating that answer key. Okay, so I've finished taking the quiz, so I have a response recorded. I'm going to close the form. That takes me back to where I'm building it, so the behind the scenes part here. And you'll notice I now have one response, and that's the key. So we have our key. At this point, what we would do is click on the spreadsheet, create a spreadsheet right here, this little icon. And what that's going to do, we're going to press create, is open a spreadsheet that is a big listing of all of your submissions. And you can see the very first one is key. That makes life much easier, especially if you're going to do open-ended questions, that it's the very first thing that you see. It's going to make it easier to compare. But for right now, we can see that we have the key. That's the only thing in there right now. And now I can do just a little bit of cleanup, if you will, or a little bit of sprucing up here. And that's going to make my analytics a little bit better as well. So let me explain. So first of all, I do have the questions here, but they are clearly cut off. So easy way to fix that, I'm going to click on this one. That is the row heading. It's going to select the entire row. And I can come up to Format and Text Wrapping. Now the reason why I'm doing this is I want to see the question. So the minute I wrap the text, now I can see the whole question. That's helpful to me, so I know what question I asked. I can also come in here, for those of you that need to know exactly which TEK was addressed with the question, on this side here in the spreadsheet, what I would do is click on the question. I just have to press enter, and then I can add in that this was for 1.1, and this one was for 2.1. I'm doing it on this end and not in the form so that it doesn't muddy up the questions, because that can be confusing for some students. They don't understand what this word is and what this number is. That's more for me. So I added on this end because that means that I'm going to be the one that sees it. Back over here on the actual quiz, if I go to questions, you'll notice nothing changed. So I'm not adding it here. It's just going to be on the results. And that'll help when we get that final spreadsheet as well. So you can add in here. So that's the first thing I would do. Now, once we have our results and we're ready for Flubaroo, we're going to actually first have to go and get it, and then second, I'll walk you through how to use it. Okay, so first, let's go ahead and talk about getting Flubaroo. To get an add-on, any add-ons, you're going to come up here to your add-on menu. Now you can see that I already have Flubaroo added, but if I did not, I would go to Get Add-ons. And then I'm going to go ahead and search for Flubaroo. And it comes up right here. Okay, so all I'd have to do is click on it, and it will install that add-on here. It's really just a one-click. It's adding it. And like I said, you can see I already have it installed. So there are a ton of add-ons here, different options. Okay, so now once I have the option, then if I want to use Flubaroo on this spreadsheet, I have to go to add-ons, go to Flubaroo, and enable it. So it says, okay, I want to use it on this spreadsheet. And it's going to notify me that, okay, now you can use Flubaroo. I do want to point out that if you want additional information outside of what I'm sharing with you, by all means, feel free to click on these links because there's a ton more that Flubaroo can do. Okay, so right now, it's all looking the same. Everything is here, everything's looking the same. It's just a big old spreadsheet. But what happens is students are going to start submitting their answers, and it's going to start rolling in here. Within seconds of a student submitting an answer, it's going to appear here in this spreadsheet. Once you've got your students' responses, then you're actually going to grade them, right? So you'll go through the grading process using Flubaroo. So let's pause and go get some student data real quick. So in order to actually use Flubaroo, obviously we need some student responses. So we're going to take a look at what a spreadsheet would look like after it has some student responses and how to actually use the tool. And I am going to show you a little bit of additional spreadsheet options and spreadsheet tools that will help you with the analytics as well, so a little bit of extra. All right, so taking a look at this spreadsheet now, we have some student data here that we can run through Flubaroo and get their grades, but also, again, give us some feedback as well. So from here, we've already enabled Flubaroo. We've already kind of fancied up our titles up here. Now what we're going to do is actually use it. So I'm going to go back to add-ons. That's where Flubaroo will live. And in Flubaroo, I'm going to now grade the assignment. Again, I'm just going to pause here and notice that there are help features, there's some tips, there's even some advanced if you're going to get super fancy. But for right now, let's take a look at grading the assignment and what that's going to do. So you'll notice you do have some pop-ups. All right, so the first thing it's going to do is go through and say, okay, which questions am I grading and which questions are just identifying students? Do I need to skip any questions? So maybe you asked a survey question, you don't want that graded, but you wanted a record of it, so you could skip that question if you wanted to. So notice it picks up that first name, last name period is identifying a student. And now at this point, I can say that this is normal grading and it's worth 1 point. So similar to how the built-in quiz was as far as point assessments, I can make different questions weighted heavier than others. I'm just going to go ahead and click here so you can see I could change this to identify student, skip grading. Now grade by hand, that's different. And I'm not going to use that one. But again, there's a lot more than what I'm showing you. Obviously, we're just doing a quick run through. So all of these, I'm going to check and make sure that they're all saying normal grading here and that it's all 1 point each. All right, so once I've verified that I've got the points and the values that I want, I'm going to click continue. So that's step 1. Step 2 is going to say, where's your answer key? And so I'm going to select it. And again, you see how easy it is to see. It's the first one, number 1, and it has key in all caps. So that's much easier to see. So that's a main reason why we want to be the first one to take that quiz. All right, and so notice over here it tells me that Flubaroo is grading my assignment. It's going to create another sheet here at the bottom. So notice it says grades, and it's grading it. So it's going through and it's analyzing everything, and it's going to give that feedback. So notice I didn't color code any of this. Here we go, it's complete. That's part of Flubaroo. So we've got some color coding here. I can see very quickly who did and did not pass. Right? And then as I kind of scroll down a little bit or scroll to the right, I'm going to notice anything that is also highlighted in orange or is identified here. So basically, this was a very low scoring question. The rest of these kind of on average. Clearly they knew this one. So I'm going to take a look and see if there's anything that clearly I need to reteach. And again, this is where it can help that you had those TEKs already identified. I pointed this out earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and point back up here that we have possible points, the average points, how many students submitted, and a low scoring question. So before I even start diving in or scrolling around, it's going to tell me right here that I had one question that really threw my class. So from here, I have a small class sample here and just a few questions. But if this was a full-out assessment, there might be many more questions. So I might need to do some filtering, or maybe I did 2 classes and I'm looking at all of them together. So what I would suggest is clicking on one of these titles down here and then going to your filter tool. So your filter tool is up here, looks like a funnel. When I click on it, it's going to grab all the contents, and notice now I have these drop downs. So I can sort my students by last name, or I can sort by their grade, whose grade is the lowest to highest, highest to lowest. So I can see exactly where they fell. Okay. And yes, there's color coding, but of course, if I'm going to now transfer this over to my grade book, yeah, I'm going to have to put it in order. But I can also do the same thing on all of these. Okay, so how many didn't get this question correct? Just by simply filtering here, I'm getting a lot of answers about some students that might need some reteaching. So again, this sorting and filtering, notice it did not grab down here. It's only grabbing the submission results. And I can go through and analyze this, as you can tell, a lot of different ways. We can probably look at that spreadsheet and sort it every which way to see, but what I'd like to share with you now is how to use Flubaroo for open-ended questions. And so this is something that was taught to me at a conference way long ago, and I thought it was genius. I thought it was just so easy, straightforward, so I would love to share that with you. All right, so we're going to hop back over to our form here, our editing of the form. Okay, we're going to hop back over here to the form in our edit mode here, and I'm going to scroll to the bottom and add an open-ended question. Okay, and so this is asking how data is written on a CD. That's something that I would have taught, and I want to see if they can describe it to me instead of just a multiple choice response. So notice it says short answer here. I also want to point out something as far as form design. If you make all of your questions required, then it won't let them submit unless they've answered all the questions. So there's a little side tip for you. So here's a short answer question. So again, I want to be the first one that takes the test. So over here, I'm going to preview. All right, I am going to answer these questions. And here's my open-ended. And so that's the answer I'm looking for. And I'm looking for 2 parts there. I'm going to show that to you in just a moment. So I'm done taking my quiz. I have my response. And if you remember, I'm going to go create that spreadsheet now. All right, and as it opens, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to the right. Okay, and here's that open-ended question. How is data written onto a CD? Pits are made with a laser. So if I'm grading this, I'm assessing this with my students, I'm going to be looking for 2 parts here. I want them to say that it's pits, and I want them to say that it was made with a laser. So I've got to grade this myself, and if you've ever given your students an open-ended question, you know that it's not so straightforward of a response that a computer can easily grade it. We have a lot of misspellings. They may put a laser makes pits, But since it doesn't match exactly, that computer can't grade it. So I'm going to go through and grade this open-ended. But since it's in a spreadsheet, I'm going to be able just to go straight down this column and say yes or no. So in order to do open-ended, what I'm going to do is add another column here. So I'm going to go over here to column L. I don't want to confuse you that I'm overlapping, so I'm going to go ahead and grab one and wrap it. There we go. Okay, so in L, I'm going to put that this is which one I'm going to grade, and then it's related to the CD. And I'm going to say that if they have it correct, I'm going to give them a 1. If they don't have it correct, I'm going to give it a 0. So now I've set it up, and so that is the sample response for the open-ended question. All right, let's get some student results in here, and I can show you how easy it is to go down the row, or excuse me, go down the column, row by row, and give these students their points or not. Okay, we magically have answers now, or responses, and I'm going to go over here to the right where I can see my responses for the open-ended question. So just to kind of explain again why I am going to read these, I am going to have misspellings, I'm going to have partial answers, and so I'm going to read them and make sure. And even in a class of 30 or more, it is much easier, in my opinion, to go down the list and say, using dark spaces, man, that sounds a lot like pits, lasers, yep, I'm going to give that to you. This one just says laser beam. Again, look at the spelling here. I can understand what they mean. Unfortunately, it's incomplete answer. Okay, and so again, tiny ditches, well, that's a pit. So they use different words. It is the same thing. So I'm going to go down quickly and give them the credit or not. So you can see how quickly it would be for me to read it. Small pits using a laser. Perfect. There we go. Okay, and so now I've graded their open-ended question. So I was able to give it to them in an assessment. I can see whether they get it or not. I can easily say that they get it or that they don't, right? And so now what do I do now that I have ones and zeros here? I'm going to go back and choose Flubaroo. Okay, so notice I didn't enable it because this was a new sheet. And I'm going to grade the assignment. And in the very first pop-up where it says, okay, what points are you going to assess? These first 3 definitely identify the student. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. Okay, how is data written onto a CD? I want them to skip grading this one. And we're going to grade the normal grading for the grade CD. So that was my note here. I'm going to continue. So now it's either going to match the 1, so they get the credit for my key, or it's not. So as I continue here, and it grades for me, at the end of the sheet, we're going to see that the open-ended response is also included here. Notice the grades are a little bit better than last time. Okay, and so you notice it says not graded, and notice that here are the answers. And I can see 81% of the responses are good on that open-ended question. So it includes it into the results. So again, it's going to give you those metrics very quickly. And if you wanted to take this several steps further, you could definitely chart this. This could be part of your continuous improvement or your PDSA that you would post. Obviously not everybody's name, but the results down here as far as which question, or even if you had identified it by TEAC. And you could share that with your students as well. And I would think that this would be great to share with your team so that you guys can compare the different assessment as well. And I know you guys have different things as far as multiple choice sheets and grade cam, but again, when you have an open-ended question, it's more difficult for an automatic grader. So again, I feel like this is a great way to very quickly go through. It's a yes or no, they got it or they didn't. and Flubaroo can grade it for you and give you those same metrics. So just to revisit some resources that I mentioned to you during this video, Google Forms are another tool that you can use for assessments. It does have some different assessment options, not just multiple choice. I've showed you open-ended as well. Remember that little shout out for linear questions, which are great for surveying, getting kind of general feedback there about comfortability levels, and you can use that, keep that information. We've talked about an add-on called Flubaroo for most of this video and what it can bring. And again, I've just showed you kind of the surface. There's a lot more to that as far as some advanced tools and how you want it to read. And again, you can customize the point values, you can add into the spreadsheets, and of course, once you add it in, it's in your Google Drive. It can stay there for reference for year to year, but also you can download it and share it with your team. You can filter those results so that you can look at just certain class periods, certain students, question by question, who got it, who didn't. And then we also looked at how to grade those open-ended questions really fast. So with that column of what you're looking for, and then a 1 or a 0 for yes or no. And then of course, once you have something that's finite, yes or no, then you can use these sources like Flubaroo or the grading tools to grade it for you. So some things to keep in mind: if you're going to have an open-ended question, then the quizzes setting doesn't really work very well. It's not conducive to that. Also, the students are not going to get the answers right away because you have to go and read their responses. But as you saw, reading the responses and saying, yes, they answered correctly, or no, they did not, was really fast. And so you could still do a very quick turnaround, especially using a tool that's going to grade it after you've said yes or no and add in those point values. So I really hope that you had some takeaways here, and feel free to send me any questions that you have about this or some success stories as well. I hope you enjoyed it.